Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I want to talk about another beautiful thing in knife design, and that is proper fastening. If there is one thing that I think most humans can agree on, it is the deep and abundant joy of a really good screw, right? Everybody really likes a good screw by and large, and you know what? There are a bunch of different things that make it good, right? You want it to be a nice deep screw. That's going to be a joy. You want things to be relatively uniform so that you're using the same tool over and over again, right? You want to have the proper hardness involved, and you absolutely don't want things to be too proprietary. You don't want to get locked in. So let's talk about each one of those things. One of the big things for me is actually depth, and that's the thing that inspired this video particularly. This is a Chris Reeve Knives Mundy, and it is a perfect example of a very nice deep screw. What we have here is this pivot screw is a hex bit, but what we see here is that when we insert it, we go all the way deep into there, right? There is a fair amount of force, there's a fair amount of depth, and as a result, when I insert this in there, not only does it mean that it's easier to get in there, right? And in fact, if I was putting this back together again, I could just set the screw down on the edge of the driver, which is itself kind of a nicety. But more importantly, because it's a nice deep screw, when I turn this guy, the entirety of the driver, there is a fair amount of driver that is engaging directly with the sides of the screw, making it much less likely that I'm going to either strip my driver or cam out the screw itself. That is a wonderful thing to not have that, to have that extra depth. It just gives you that much more control, and it makes the screw that much more robust. Here's another nice example of it, again from Chris Reeve Knives. We get this very, very nice deep screw here on this Shabazz 31. Absolutely a beautiful thing, and all of them have that nice depth here, meaning it's very straightforward to take this guy apart. That is a wonderful thing. Here's a different example. This is not the same kind of depth, but at the same time, it's been done intelligently. This is the tactile knife company, Rockwall. And what we see here is that the screw is definitely a little bit more shallow, but at the same time, they've done their best with it, right? Because the bottom of it is very flat, and then the top of it, although there's a little bit of chamfer, there is plenty of depth as well. And so you still get a fair amount of engagement with the edges of the Torx bit, and it seats well on the end of a driver. That's a beautiful thing. Here's another knife from North Arm Knives, the Skaha 2. And you know what? Every one of these screws has plenty of depth to it. Or here, the ProTech Knives, Malibu. Again, take a look at that depth. That is a beautiful thing and something I really appreciate. We can contrast this with, for instance, an example here that prompted this video, right? This is a screw that is kind of dumb because not only, it's a relatively thick screw, right? We see that it's pretty proud of that, but the actual hole on it is very, very small. Not only is there a chamfer going into the screw here, which certainly it's nice to break those edges, but that chamfer is very deep, but there's also kind of a conical thing at the very bottom of it, meaning that the actual usable amount of screw on this, the amount of basically engagement surface is very, very shallow, right? And so as a result, all it takes is a little bit of thread locker to not be able to use this guy, to cam out the screw, and for everything to start slipping, to destroy drivers. This is just a bad screw design. Here's another example that does a very similar thing here, where we again have a very deep chamfer going in there, as well as a conical surface. There is very little surface there for the screw to engage with, and I really don't like that. That's something that doesn't bring me a whole lot of joy, right? So it's very important that your screws have the proper depth. Another thing that's important, or at least that I find to be pleasurable, is a uniform size, right? This one isn't crucial, right? It's not going to prevent you from taking it apart, but the thing is, it's always a joy if you can use fewer tools, and if you need to carry fewer tools, right? One of the joys of the Shabazz here is that all of these screws are exactly the same size. I can use one single screw size to unscrew every bit of this. And so as a result, if I think I might need to take this guy apart, if I might need to clean it up or something, if I'm going into a sticky situation, all I really need to bring is one single bit, and I know it will fit all of these guys, and that's all that I need. Similarly, this guy here is disassemblable with just a Torx T8, because it is T8, T8, and T8. As opposed to some knives where you get, let's see, it's two T6s here, then there's a T15 here, and then once you take the bolster off, there's a T5 and a T5, and then there's a T12 holding in this, and it's just a pain in the neck because you end up bringing the whole damn toolbox just to do it, just to take the thing apart. So having uniform screw size is a beautiful thing, and having bigger screw size, generally speaking, I don't know, I'm a big fan. T6 is a little bit small, guys. If you can fit a T8, T10, that's generally a beautiful thing. Next thing I appreciate is proper hardness, right? For a good screw to happen, you need the right hardness. And the thing is, usually that's done well. And I'm not a fastener engineer, right? I can't tell you it needs to be this Rockwell. But I have seen all too often aesthetics taking a priority over hardness. Very often this has happened with titanium screws. People want to anodize the screws purple, and as a result, they make them out of titanium, and they don't do the hardness right, such that the screws will cam out at a moment's notice, right? It's not a beautiful thing, right? You end up with a screw hole that is just a cylinder at a certain point, and the knife is stuck forever in the state it was. You can't tighten it, you can't loosen it, you get it dirty, oh, sorry. That's not a beautiful thing, and so I very much appreciate when companies, yeah, certainly it might look a little prettier to use, but you need to make sure that you put the function before the aesthetics, and if you're going to use colorful screws, you need to make sure those colorful screws are actually still going to be decent as screws, that they're going to be at the right hardness, and they're going to work well. And finally, another really important thing to me is standardization, right? You don't want to end up locked into some weird exotic thing, right? That's not a beautiful thing. Because there are lots of people out there in the world who use, well, proprietary bits of a variety. I mean, sometimes they are outright proprietary. This is an example of a knife that has an actual proprietary screw bit. There is literally no driver in the world that fits this except the one that came with the tool. And a lot of people say, well, Nick, come on, I included the tool. Well, yeah, that's better. But at the same time, that's like kicking somebody a nut in the nuts and then including an ice pack. Like, dude, you could have just not done it to start with, right? Because when you include a proprietary tool, you are forcing the person to carry that proprietary tool or to have that proprietary tool with them all the time, as opposed to if you're using something straightforward, like an Allen key or a Torx size, then chances are pretty much any toolbox, any basic grocery, well, maybe not grocery store, but hardware store, is going to have the tools required to take the thing apart, and that is a beautiful thing. Then there are also the kind of semi-proprietary bits, the weird bits that you'll see out there. Here's an example of a set of security Torx bits, where it's a Torx bit, but then they put this little post in the middle there just as a screw you. And it is very possible to find Torx bits that have that, come here, security Torx bit. Like for instance, so here's a Torx bit with a little hole at the end of it. You can get them out there, but at the same time, there is no reason they needed to do that. That's just kind of a screw you, quite literally. Or you will occasionally see people using snake bite bits. These are definitely available out in the open market, right? You'll see like two holes next to one another or a spanner style thing. I mean, you can do it, but at the same time, why are you doing it? You could have just done something more reasonable, and I don't freaking know. I don't get it, right? It seems like a better approach just to, well, design the knife to be easily disassemblable by the maker rather than trying to lock them out of their own tools. So, at the very, very least, I think we can all agree that a really good screw is a wonderful thing. When it's got the right depth, when the size is just where it needs to be and stays there, when the hardness is good, and when everything is standardized, not too crazy exotic so you're only getting it in one place, there is a lot of joy in that. And so there you go. That is a beautiful thing. Proper fastener design is great, and you all probably need to go wash your minds because I know what you're thinking right now. Have an absolutely wonderful rest of the day. Bye now.